Hey YouTube, Meef here. Welcome to episode 43 of my Feed the Beast quick tips and tricks and stuff. Kind of wanted to go over a little bit of Reactor automation today so that we don't have to actually sit here and manually load this anymore. So if you haven't done it, we can help you out with that. I'm actually using the ME network to do this just because I'm a big fan of it. And I guess the whole setup hinges around the tier 5 void ore miner, and we'll take a look at that in just a bit here. But at tier 5, that's where you're actually picking up uranium on the regular. So I've got mine set up with a green laser lens just so it kind of increases this, but I'm using a whole bunch of null modifiers, so who knows if it's really doing what it's supposed to be doing. It seems like it's doing its thing. I've been running this pretty continuous, and it looks like there is, I think that's is that a 7? That might be 7,000. I can't tell. But anyway, the way I've got this set up, the reactor itself, right now it's running at 4.14 KRF per tick. The millibuckets per tick is, I guess it's low enough. This is just 3 control rods, but what I've got is a whole bunch of this cryothium stuffed in here. That's why you see the snow on the top. But that's the coolant I'm using in here. It works pretty damn well. You can see this is low enough, I guess. So the last episode I kind of went over automating some of the basic applied energistic components. Most of this stuff that I used here, I crafted all this stuff. So set yourself up, do yourself a favor, get the ME network to craft this stuff. Let's go take a look at that tier 5 ore miner and the way that's set up. I kind of showed that a little bit in the last episode, but let's go take a look. So components in here aren't too bad. You'll see this thing looks a little bit different. The setup itself, it looks like it's getting a little bit taller. I got a feeling that the last tier is going to do the same thing yet, but let's take a look at what this thing costs. So we've got the controller itself. This isn't all that difficult to create. These advanced machine casings are kind of a pain in the ass, just because of these data control circuits and all the emerald and stuff that's there, but relatively simple. This stuff is kind of expensive for these highly advanced machine frames just because of the chrome, the titanium. So if you haven't been making that, definitely keep an eye out for it. This chrome dust is actually going to be rubies. So you should be picking all that stuff up from the tier 4 stuff. This is just kind of pushing you through. So, and then the iridium reinforced tungsteel block. I did this by actually using iridium reinforced stone. So it's just stone with an iridium alloy plate rather than actually try and go through and screw around with all this tungsteel ingot stuff. It was just faster. I had all this stuff on hand, so that's just what I use. So the structure frame for tier 5, this really isn't all that complicated. Peridot, there's ways to get it. I use the industrial grinder for some of this stuff, but I also use this implosion compressor. If you look here, you can see the small pile that comes out. I took that, turned it into actual regular peridot dust, and then actually pushed it through this implosion compressor since I have so much TNT sitting around. But that really, it works pretty well for picking this peridot stuff up. So your other pain in the ass is going to be the cyanite, but if you've been running your reactor, keep it small. Don't use any coolant if you're trying to generate this stuff fast. That's what I did. It worked relatively well. But just keep in mind that you're going to need some of this stuff. I think the numbers, let's take a look here. Void ore miner controller tier 5, and you're looking at 72 structure frames. So make extras. Your structure panels actually go down, laser cores, and then just clear laser lens. So let's take a look at the caches stuff. I think I went over this in the last episode, but let's take a look. So this is all stuff that I don't want in there. This is charged Certus quartz. That kind of clogs shit up. But all the glowstone, all the apatite, and then coal is just getting stored here. I'm gonna have to dump this coal out again. But anyway, I've got uranium set to come out too. And what I'm doing with that is I'm actually pumping this back into the ME network. So this is going into an import bus and then just goes back upstairs. Let's go take a look at what else we've got going. Let's see here. So if you can see, just barely under this chest here, there's actually an ME import bus. And what I've got there is I've set this to dump out all the uranium ore that we're pulling out of that cache, and it's pushing it straight into this chest. So it's just dumping this stuff in here. Once it gets into the chest, it's being pumped into the grinder, and then it's being pushed into the chest, which then goes into the import bus. So that goes in as dust. Or let's take a look, see what it's actually called. I think it's uranium grit is what it's called. Yep, that's it right there. But that's just coming out. So that's relatively simple setup. That's just getting your uranium grit, and then you'll see that this is my setup for my electric furnace. You're going to see some extra stuff here. We'll go over that in a couple episodes once we get to that. This is just kind of for the power cell stuff, but I have another export bus here. That's pushing uranium grit into this chest. So this is the input for this furnace. What it does is it creates ingots of this uranium. Once it's there, it goes back into this chest. This is just my collection point for this end of the facility, I guess, and then it just gets stuck in the network. You can see that this kind of throttles up and down as it needs to. Just kind of does its thing. You can see I got a whole bunch of this sitting here now. Let's go take a look at what I've got going upstairs. So I've got a bunch of lines running up top, and again using caches here to make this go. There's a couple missing channels here because I've got stuff set up down in the basement that I had to move, so I'm one short. That's why those aren't actually pumping into the network. But what's going on here, so I've got a couple reactor access ports. This one's set for inlet mode, so once the ME network pumps all the uranium ingot stuff into this cache, so this is just an export bus with a filter set for uranium ingots, it puts it in here, and I've got this set as locked, so if you got this in here, you can use a empty hand, shift and right click it, it'll lock it, so that even if you do take everything out, the only thing that'll go back in here ever is going to be these uranium ingots. So just keep that in mind. Just a servo on the bottom, this is just pumping stuff back in here, and as you can see, it's just keeping this inlet full. So this same reactor access port set next to it is actually set for outlet mode, so this is just pushing stuff out. So the servo on there is taking all the waste and pushing it back into this cache. It should never fill up. You could run this straight up into an import bus, but you can see that cyanite totals kind of stack up, so I'm actually putting that into the network. So that's pretty much the setup for this. The reason for doing so is I get that 4K RF per tick, and I kind of needed it to keep up with all the machines running at one time, especially once you start to automate and these machines start running by themselves. Power is kind of going to be a little bit of a pain in the ass. So find your pinch points. That void ore miner is probably, I guess it's permanently on just because I've got the power to actually let it run, because it's pumping yet all that uranium back up to the reactor now, so that thing will just run. So I'll just kind of keep bringing in materials as I need it. If you don't have one of these information screens available, get one. The way I've got this set up is these power cells just hang down through the ceiling, and I've got this attached here just so I could see what the hell's going on. When these numbers kind of match like this, you can see that you're doing all right. But when it really gets down there, and if you're struggling, figure out ways to shut machines off that you don't use, or start batching stuff. It just works a little bit better. So I think that's about it for this one. Just kind of wanted to go over automating that reactor so you don't have to do anything with it. Just let it run. You could definitely shut it off if you need to, but it'll just kind of do its thing. So that's it for this episode. Till next time.